Good evening and welcome to Generation Movie. Sorry we're running a little bit late tonight. All my fault, not Rich Drees at all. My fault because we have a tiny human in we have a few tiny humans in the house, and it's middle of summer, so sometimes they're hard to get to bed. My name is J.W. Colwell. What was that?
Leprechauns.
Yes, they're tiny humans, and they're sometimes hard to. It's like herding cats sometimes, and trying to get them to fall asleep. But so, sorry about being late, but welcome to Generation Movie on this fine Monday night as we continue our Film-A-versary summer. Got an interesting one tonight. Not everybody's cup of tea, but one of those movies that is, from the 90s that's incredibly influential. We're talking about Stargate tonight later. It's one of those more influential movies that you don't even think about how influential it was until you start looking through stuff online and how many Stargate shows there are and how many actors got employed by that particular franchise over the years. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that with all the different things we look at, production and budget, and all these different things that we put together to give a full Generation Movie view of the movie. Summer's kicking along, movie-wise. Hold on, let's say hi to people before we get going. Hello, Jamie Hill. Thank you for joining us. Good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan. How are you?
Evening, Ken.
Good evening, gentlemen. Hope all is well. Yes, I was running late. It was a munchkin. Run amok. Jamie Hill says, love Stargate. Okay, or I had an extra love. It's just love Stargate. And then we refer to the kids and grandkids as minions or parasites. Just kidding. Munchkins are fine. Munchkins or little tiny humans is how I refer to the one. He's the tiny one, the tiniest one we have in the house. The tiny one we have in the house is Machiavelli. He plots things out. He's like a velociraptor testing cages. He's hilarious. I love him, but he's a bad liar, and it's kind of funny. And then, hi, Ken. Hi, Joe from Jamie Hill. Let's talk about, so it was doom and gloom last week when we were on the show about the box office. This week, not as much doom and gloom, Rich. It's amazing what a week will do when a movie opens that exceeds expectations. Right?
I don't know if it exceeded expectations. It kind of landed right where they were forecasting.
Sony went low. Sony said 40, and then it grossed 58, so it looked better than 56. I should say.
They might have Scottied it. Yeah.
But I think I'm okay if we're gonna have weeks where we scuttle movies because they come in under expectations. For a studio to go, oh, we hope it makes 40 and it makes 56. That's okay too, right? We're just playing by the expectations. I will say it's an interesting term because this movie, I saw it on Thursday. It's not rocket science, but it's a pretty good action flick. You know what I mean? Like it's not The Rock or it's not Die Hard, right? But
Mm-mm.
it's fun and it's okay and it's engaging and it's got. I will tell you a quirk fetish thing that came up. There is a sequence in this movie where it's at an alligator park, and I got to tell you, it took me back. I was like thinking of like great alligator sequence movies. Alligator, the '80s movie, of course, by John Sayles, which is one of the greatest monster movies ever made. Robert Forster, fantastic, highly, highly recommended. And then I was thinking about Eraser, right? Because Eraser has that ridiculous CGI alligator thing, and this one is a little bit more laid back, but it's still, it ends with Martin Lawrence calling the alligator racist, which is pretty funny. I mean, it's not a great movie, but it again put a jolt into the box office. And let's be honest, we need whatever jolts we can to keep theaters going, right, Rich?
True, true. Um, we also had the Watchers open up, which I wasn't too hot on. I don't know where you fell on that, but
I think I let's talk about the Watchers for a second. I think it's a cool concept because, like, I was thinking about like the suicide forest in Japan, and I was thinking like that, right? I thought it was like
Mhm.
a cool concept, but is the twist ending 25 minutes? It's a 25-minute twist ending, Rich, and it just
That whole third act I felt was really kind of unnecessary. And if it ended on the
cool.
bus, which would have been a weird echo of the ending of The Graduate of all things, but if they had ended it on the bus,
Perfect.
I
It would have
kind
been
of would have
perfect.
liked
It
the movie a little bit.
would have liked 100 times better. We just it could have ended on the bus with whatever character. We're not gonna give any spoilers, but could have ended
Mhm.
on the bus with the character looking out the window, kind of knowingly, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But then it becomes this 25-minute, going to the professor's study and looking at
Which
wall placards, and it just
which
it
it's a
grinds it to.
his study was a big ass office, and just saying, "Oh, some of the college kids got together and decided to fund it to keep it the way it is the most ridiculous thing ever." I howled.
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
I
it's
remember
a, it's a
like,
three it's a
"What?"
three office where he
Mhm.
has history everywhere, and like they go to one of the placards, and the one placard is like it looks like it's on fucking Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I just the third
I have to
the
go to the
third the
exposition dump room,
yes,
it's
the 25-minute twist ending is usually not what you want to see.
yeah.
Like, I don't know, like up until that point, up until up until where they find the lost chamber is the best way I can describe it. Up until when they find the lost chamber,
Yeah,
I
I
was
thought
on
about that
board.
too, yeah.
I was on board, and then it was like as it kind of just like it's one of those movies where you can see you can see the support beams in the house buckling 20 minutes before it ends, and you're just like, I hope the whole house doesn't come down.
Mhm.
And then it does. Another thing that happened over the weekend that again, um, is a kind of a big deal. Lord of the Rings. They released the Lord of the Rings movies, all three movies this weekend, the extended editions. They each grossed about $2 million, which is about
Nice.
a fifth of what new movies are making. So that should give you
Uh-huh.
some, and for one show, that should give you some idea of how dangerous it is to be a movie theater right now. And
And
another thing,
if you missed out on that, they're doing it again next weekend as
yeah,
well.
it did so well that they're smartly. And here's the thing, Rich, why didn't they do it next weekend? Because you're telling me nobody could get their fathers to go to Lord of the Rings on Father's Day weekend? Like, I just think it's silly.
Mm.
But another thing that's kind of happening, which is kind of interesting, is I think because of the dearth of children's movies, what's happening now is that these children's movies are lasting and just kind of sticking around. Like that's what's happening with If, right? If came out in the middle of May and everybody's like wrote it off, and here we
Mm-hmm.
are, going into the middle of June, and If is still third in theaters. Was third this weekend. It only dropped 25%, and
Mm-hmm.
it's now at a steady $93 million domestic for an original property, which that's astounding for an original movie. And
True.
Garfield is bumping along too. They're
And
both
think how
kind of just
quickly they were to want to write it off, or 2 weeks ago.
yeah,
You
and
know,
and
it's ridiculous.
I think that's an interesting, like the people that aren't writing it off are parents that need somewhere to take their kids. And what we're writing off is you and I and I think it's a lot of people in our age and younger and ever we get excited about all these big adult movies, but a big portion of what's keeping theaters alive is how good the children's entertainment is. Right? It better
Mm-hmm.
be good. I think the two bigger movies of the summer are going to be Inside Out and Despicable Me. I think they're like I know everybody's in this Wolverine, Deadpool, and how could you not be? If you're a fan,
Yeah.
how could you not be excited? But when I tell you that my nephews are excited about the Minions, and when I tell you, you know, my wife is excited about Inside Out too, that should give you an idea of like where we're at. And I think both those movies have a shot. But I'm super happy for Krasinski and If. I'm super happy that we have an original movie that's bumping along, doing okay. You know what I mean? Like, uh, you know, not
Mm-hmm.
everything is. Furiosa is not doing great, but again, I don't understand. The Fury Road did great early, but then it kind of trailed off really quick, like this one did. And the other thing is, what'd you expect? Like I don't, and another, I've been watching movies all weekend. I saw Bad Boys and the Watchers on Thursday. I saw, fuck did I say? I saw Hitman on Friday. Holy shit.
I
Richard
need to catch up with
Linklater.
that.
Oh my God, it's fantastic. Richard Linklater, Glenn Powell, the star of the day, like the guy that's super hot. He's like supernova hot.
Yeah, I'm
But
technically in the middle of Tribeca Film Festival right now. I was credentialed for just virtual this year, so I've been doing all my festing from my sofa right over there.
nice.
Seen a couple of
What'd
good films so far. I'm very excited
you
about
see?
that. Well, I just finished about 20 minutes ago a documentary on the Montreux Jazz Festival called "They All Came Down to Montreux," which kind of went from a jazz to like a jazz rock world fusion kind of a festival. And the guy who founded it was like super into music, and he videoed and filmed just about everything that ever happened there. So you're seeing so many of these just quick glimpses of these great performances. From like 1969 forward, you're seeing people like everybody from Etta James to David Bowie, and it's fantastic. And it's a giant tease though, because you don't get a whole lot of full performances. You maybe get like 30 seconds or a minute of something, and you're
Oh,
just like, oh no, no,
oh
I need
no
to see
no
more of that. More, more,
that
more,
I
more.
want. I need that.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you're
It,
mentioning Bowie tonight, because
mhm.
Bowie was also on my mind today. I was telling you the other things. Some of the other things were on my mind watching Stargate again, but Bowie was definitely on my mind today. Another, that's a cool movie. What else? Like I saw the Fall Guy, by the way, also this weekend.
Oh,
I
okay.
bought, I rented the Fall Guy. I don't want to be out of turn, and I don't want to get yelled at for being a critic and whatever. But I'm going to tell you right now, I fucking
Hmm.
love the movie. I don't understand how this movie did not gross $100 million. Like it's close now.
Mm.
It's like at 85, but
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't. It's funny, and it's the only thing I could say that might be against it is that it's a little too meta. Like it's,
Mhm.
you know what I mean. But the meta shit is all like stuff I support. So like their meta stuff is like we don't get Oscars, we don't get gold for stuff. And it's like
One of the
they should.
Yeah, I was gonna say one of the other documentaries that I watched today, actually, as I'm also in the process of trying to get ready to go on vacation and everything else, was something I think that's going to be of interest to our viewers, especially. It's called Brats.
Ah,
It's You know what I'm talking about, don't
I
you?
do know what you're
Andrew
talking about. This is
Andrew McCarthy.
the Andrew McCarthy Bad
Yeah,
Boy Brat documentary from the Brat
yeah,
Pack
did a
days.
documentary on the Brat Pack, the actors who kind of got lumped into that, kind of against their will. That wasn't like anything anybody was really too happy with as a designation. Um,
I would
and
imagine it's really good.
It is. It's really good. I mean, there's some really interesting conversations with the people who did want to be involved with the documentary. Um, uh, you know, just
Is
you
there
know, kind of fun to catch up.
is there a Judd Nelson sighting? Because Judd was the one that I thought was gonna break out. Like Judd was the one, then then he made Blue City and then it was over. And just
well, I hate to tell you this. Judd Nelson and Molly Ringwald kind of declined to participate,
boo.
and I find it. They're like, Andrew McCarthy saying, well, they both kind of want to, concentrate on the future, not look back at the past. And I find that a little odd from Molly Ringwald, simply because several years ago I saw her performing live at the Blue Note in New York City with a friend of mine. Um, she was doing jazz standards. She had like a three-piece band behind her and everything. It was a great evening, just doing great old American songbook classic
Was she
songs.
talking about 16 Candles and stuff?
She closed with this really beautiful, haunting, sweet arrangement of "Don't You Forget About Me," which she dedicated to Cameron Crowe. I mean, to John Hughes, excuse me. And so I'm like, well, I mean, if she doesn't want to keep, looking back at the past, maybe a little disingenuous too. And I hate to say that because I really enjoyed the performance.
did she in the middle of the show like put lipstick on with her boobs?
No, she did not. Sadly, no.
Damn it.
I know.
I would have brought my elephant. I would have brought my elephant lighter. The light up elephant that didn't work. Well, no, but I think the movie's got to be. It's going to be exciting because it's coming. I think it's coming out on Hulu this week, right?
It's either this week or next week, but yeah, it's well worth everybody's time. It's an hour and a half, so it's not going to kill your entire evening.
Right,
watch.
and I would imagine they talk about the big three, which is what, like 16 Candles, Saint Elmo's Fire, like Breakfast Club, you know what I mean? Like those are the Brat Pack movies.
We talk a bit about the movies, but they're talking more about how this label came to be upon them and how it kind of affected their lives, how they thought about themselves and their careers and things like that. It's more about
okay, wait, no. So I get it. But it's
dealing with being 22 and in the spotlight like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's an interesting thing. Because you and I grew up in the '80s, and we didn't have a chance. When we grew up in the '80s, we didn't have a chance to be like in our mental health, or you know what I mean. Like, I think that's a new, it's going to be a real interesting movie for me to watch because I don't think that people were like when people were called the Brat Pack and like just fucking deal with it, just live with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to be called that. Too fucking bad. It's gonna stick. You know what I mean? Like, and you and I grew up in a time when I know my dad was a pull yourself up by your bootstraps guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, just suck it up and rub some dirt on it and get up. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
And now we're it's kind of a place where we can mental health issues are kind of an interesting. I think it's a better world. Like you're gonna get some people who are like, "Oh, it's a whiny world." Yes, but you know what? A world where people can process through their fucking emotions and be able to like do what, be able to kind of like get out from under whatever is causing
Yeah,
a shadow
I mean,
in their lives. Is, you know what I mean? But I think when they grew up in the 80s, I bet you it was fucking way tougher than we could probably imagine. You know what I mean?
mhm, yeah, it's
Um,
you know, and even wanting to distance themselves from that umbrella title, they wound up not doing projects together that they would have normally have had been thinking about making. So just kind of that we lost, one or two movies that would have had different combinations of some of those actors. And that always bums me out when I hear about a movie we could have had that we don't. So,
um, last story before, and then we'll talk about Stargate for everybody who's waiting. Um,
mhm.
we want to give a shout out. Indie Escape Network is good friends with David Howard Thornton. Of course, he plays Art the Clown. He's played the Grinch in the horror Grinch movie that was out a few years ago. But he had a big casting thing in Variety today. He has been cast as the mischievous and evil Steamboat Willie, and
Oh
the
dear.
in the well, we have a lot of horror fans on the show on the network. So,
I
but
know, I know.
he's been it's called Screamboat is the name of the movie, and it's I was reading the synopsis. It sounds fun. First off, he's very talented with what he does. Art the Clown is a super compelling horror icon right now. And since the funny thing here is that Steamboat Willie is the earliest version of Disney. It's the earliest version of Mickey Mouse we've ever gotten, and it finally entered the public domain on January 1st, which opens the door for interpretations. And Streamboat follows a group of New Yorkers on a late night ferry ride that turns deadly when a mischievous mouse begins a rampage targeting unsuspecting passengers. I just want to say congratulations to him because it's going to be a hit. Like it's in our weird world right now, it is going to be a big hit. Plus because everybody likes to take on the mouse. You know what I mean? And it's just the idea that this particular mouse is now in the public domain where anybody can do anything they want with him. I don't know if that's the original interpretation of what we thought about when things got into public domain. Like as you and I get older, the stuff that we love is going to be in the public domain, and all of a sudden it's going to be kind of like, no, I don't know that I need that. I don't know that I want that. You know what I mean? Like,
This is
you
exactly what
know,
the founding forefathers had in mind.
but
Delightful
I
children's
want to I want to congratulate him. It's a
murder.
big deal. It's a big deal. It was leading hits this morning on, Terrifier's done so well as a franchise, and he has
Mhm.
Terrifier 3 coming out. I want to congratulate him. He will now play Art the Clown, scary Mickey Mouse, and he's also was the scary version of the Grinch. Um, he's got this on lockdown. He's one of our best horror icon actors right now. So I want to congratulate him, and wish him the best of luck as he's moving from New
Yes,
York
indeed.
to LA. So good luck. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this. This, uh, you know, I I love the movie. I I love it. I remember it. I watched it today. There are vast chunks of the movie that I had completely not had in my brain for a long time.
Yeah,
Like
I haven't watched
I
it
haven't
in
seen this movie in
like 20 years.
ages. Probably give or take. This is the movie we're talking about tonight. Stargate. Kurt Russell, James Spader, an odd pairing at best. It's an odd
Mm.
pairing. And let's talk about production. Well, first off, so bad at some of these things. I don't mean to be. I just am. First off, if you like the show, subscribe on our YouTube channel. All our shows are there. All the shows on the network are also there under the Indie Escape Network. So you can find our show. You can find Loud and Nerdy. You can find Gabe's show. He just had a great show last week. But like and subscribe on YouTube. It helps us out a great deal. Or
Mhm.
if you prefer Facebook, we have the Indie Escape Network Facebook page. Check us out there. You'll find all our things, links to the live broadcast and everything. We appreciate it. And now into production. I think an interesting. This is a very '90s movie, right, Rich? And I think when
Yes.
you're watching it, it feels big and loud, and it's right around a time when people are trying to find hits, right? It's one of those movies where it came out in '94. People were trying to find new things. Like we're 5 years removed from Batman. We're 5 years removed from the Ghostbusters, Batman, Indiana Jones, Lethal Weapon 2, Summer, right? And we're trying to find new things. And this is a first, like the production is very much a first kind of out of the gate thing for Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin, right? Um,
Hmm.
eh,
It's I want to take a half step back and just say I think the script itself is a fun idea that I don't think anybody had
it's
really kind of
funky.
decided to tackle before. In they kind of take that whole Eric von Daniken Chariots of the Gods thing, where the ancient aliens built the pyramids and all this other stuff. This kind of like silly
I swear to
urban
God, if I had a bet about
legend.
getting in Charity of the Gods first, I was going to do it tonight, and you beat me to it. Um, yeah, it's an interesting concept. Like the film plays now like a calling card. Look what we can do with a cool concept, right?
Mhm.
Um, all the plot threads don't work, but most of them do, right? Like, and I think what you have, you have these two guys, Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich, who are going to go on and really, literally burn the world down, and in various things. And most people forget this is the movie that got them in the door and
Mhm.
got them their budgets. You know what I mean? It looks like $1 million. It like I didn't realize it was filmed on location in California and Yuma, Arizona. And as I was watching the credits today, I was like, it doesn't look like Arizona, and it doesn't look like California. It looks like an alien planet. It looks, you know what I mean? Like, the production design is top notch. Patrick Titopoulos does like these incredible armored
Mhm.
helmets, right? Um,
And I mean, Roland Emmerich, and Dean Devlin were coming off of working together on Universal Soldier. so,
let's
so
yeah,
you
let's
know,
not get super excited. I'm sorry, I'm joking. Universal Soldier is a perfectly fine movie. It's just I think it's one of those movies that people get all jazzed about, and then they watch it and they're like, "Oh, it's not
eh,
as good as I remembered." Like, you know,
yeah, and I don't remember it as being any good anyway, so that's even worse. Um,
I think the biggest thing about the development of this movie, the filming, they came with a screenplay. It was ready to go from the get go. They basically, it does have a director's cut, so there are weird versions out there. It's not Blade Runner, but it's you can find extended versions and different versions. They have different cuts or pieces that look different. I think for me, the production side of the story that I got reading up on it, looking at it today, I think it looks amazingly. It looks like a foreign country. Like it doesn't look like Arizona and California. So
no,
when you
it's
watch it, it looks really great, and and the production design is top notch. And also like it has the most eclectic sci-fi action movie cast I have ever seen. Like it's like Kurt Russell. Yes, you expect Kurt Russell in a movie like this. James Spader. I don't know. Like he's quirky enough, and part of the charm of the movie is that he is so opposite Russell, right? So and
Mhm.
Spader at the time is coming off of sex lies and videotape, and like all these independent quirky movies, or people will say he's coming off of Pretty in Pink, where we know he's a bad guy. He's Blaine, fucking
Mm.
Blaine. Just he's not Blaine. Sorry. Anyway, but
Um,
it's a quirky choice, is the
mm.
thing I would say, right?
I forgot that, Richard Kind, who is a great, one of the great comedy character actors out there of our
There's
generation,
two. There's two that spring up in the movie where you go, what the
and
fuck?
I didn't even catch it until I heard their voice. But French Stewart from Third Rock from the
He's
Sun
jacked. He's jacked in this movie.
is,
Jacked.
yeah, he's one of the army guys. I was like,
He's one of the
wait a
grunts.
minute, was that French Stewart?
Yeah, he's jacked and he's doing this weird New York accent.
Mm-hmm.
So the cat, and then of course the ultimate casting, like Jaye Davidson is cast as the effeminate slash, it's weird casting. I was thinking when you said Bowie earlier, right? I would have loved to see Bowie or somebody with gravitas. You know what I mean? Like it's a weird casting, but I remember at the time, right? Jaye Davidson's coming off the Crying Game, right? So the casting here is it's like putting some Glenn Powell in a movie right now,
Yes.
right? It's oh my god, that person just did that movie where it was Oscar nominated, everybody was talking about it. Yes, he could definitely play somebody that looks like Egyptian, maybe, or alien,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Because he had alien qualities in the Crying Game. You know what I mean? Like it's just, but it's casting that I think is more. I would have liked more gravitas. I think it's spot casting. Give me 1 second. We got comments. Ken McKernan. This was a little old. A friend of mine was in 9 episodes of Stargate Universe as Airman Dunning. Super cool.
Mm.
We're going to talk about the many versions of Stargate.
No boy.
Because there are so many, Rich. So many that I had trouble finding the movie today. Also, you can't rent or buy the movie on any of the streaming sites. You have to go through Tubi right now or MGM.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I just
really
played my DVD of it, so
I'm a long way from DVDs at this point. So I realized what our people are dealing with is like a lot of whatever. Dave was on my original show about 6 years ago, Billy Gray relationship with the Terrifier guys. Yeah, we're happy for him. I want to see your T-shirts. I'm pro turtle all the time.
Cool.
And what is yours, Rich?
Mine is Steve and Jane and Tony and Alan Mooch.
Okay.
Now do you know what? Yeah. Now do you know who they are?
Mooch. I don't know. I would hope it's something from Happy Days. It sounds like it could be something from Happy Days. I'm gonna stick to it. I'm wrong, but go ahead.
It's the teens from the 1958 The Blob.
Oh, okay. And these, of course,
yeah.
Of course, everybody knows who's on my shirts. I have Michelangelo, Leonardo, Donatello, and Raphael. But Rich is too cool for school, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, it is what it is. Is that a little person behind me? It is. I see a little person. We're having all kinds of trouble with little people tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Put your head back. Go back. Good night. Close the door. It's a live show, kids. It's a live show. As it closes with a thud. He's just popping his head out. We're happy for you, okay? Okay. I sounds mean. But yeah, I mean the production, there's not a lot of like stories about it, right? There's nothing where you go, there's nothing any stories about how casting happened, or it's all about visual effects. It's all about, like the Mask of the Pharaoh opening is a big to do. The score, David
Mhm.
Arnold. It's a really good score. The music is really good. I was thinking about that. It does have an epic kind of like, it feels almost David Leanish, right? Along with being an action film score, and a sci-fi movie score. You know what I mean? It has good pacing. It has, big moments where it kind of plays out. Uh, you like when like That's one of the good stories, is when Arnold basically premiered the score for the film. They had never heard it or seen it with the movie, and when he premiered it, like, Devlin and Emmerich were like, "Oh, we struck gold. This guy is definitely
Awesome. Yeah.
awesome," and it is a really good score. It's very, the person I would say it's most reminiscent for me is Horner. It's like a James Horner score, like Star Trek 2, or
Mhm.
it's got very serious tones, and then it shifts into like everybody has their own cadence and melody. You know what I mean? Jay Davidson has specific, music that's played for him. The indigenous people are actually the humans that have been stolen. Uh, they have their own score. I think, the other big thing is that they put a lot of work into all of the stuff behind the scenes. So like, you know, they the wormhole looks great, and there's a very, it's a nod and a twitch to, a little bit 2001, but
Mhm.
also like right at the beginning of we're right in the kind of the nutshell of Terminator 2, liquid effects, and it's right around there. You know what I mean? But everything looks great. It works great. Um, and the production was very, very subdued. Like they were like, it's a calling card movie though. Like it's one of those movies where you realize that they're playing a bigger game, and that they're making movies, um, they're playing bigger games.
Yeah.
Budget was,
They had been working in like some, smaller budgeted film. And I think they took a lot of like their experience in making every penny count and making sure you have every cent of your budget up on that screen. And they turned around and gave something probably that has a bit more of an epic feel than you would normally expect for whatever they paid for this movie.
yeah, and that's the other thing. Like they made smart decisions. Like the original, I one of the stories that you read about is when they first put the Stargate on the screen, it looked like a giant tire, and so I guess one of the effects guys uh, took that to heart, and the next day they came in and it was painted silver. Voila, like something as simple as silver paint making things work. You know what I mean? Um, oh, okay, that's what I said. We're very happy for him. Yeah, okay, I got it. I understand now, Joe. Thanks. Um, Comments. We're always talking to each other. But yeah, the production is very non-eventful, except for a bunch of people kind of like, when you start realizing the people that are involved in this movie, and like you said, French Stewart, hilarious. Like you just when you realize it's the tiny person from Third Rock from the Sun, you're like, holy shit. And then Richard Kind, who's like, he's playing a scientist, and he's playing a scientist that is eventually going to get, you know, um, kind of
Mhm.
like, you know, uh, he basically gets spadered, right?
Yeah.
Like this scene happens where Spader walks in. There's all these like weird on a board, and he immediately starts erasing their shit. 3 minutes into their super secret facility. Um, there, he's changing words, and he's like, no, it's not heaven, it's a Stargate. You know what I mean? And so, and also, like, again, this pairing, Kurt Russell and Spader together, is one of those eclectic movie pairings where you're just like, I don't know that this should work, but it does. You know, uh, so filming takes place. They basically do the opening credits and everything using motion control cameras. So it's one of the first times that's been used. Um, you know, the pairing with the music didn't happen until very late in the game. Visual effects
Mhm.
also a big to do because it's not. This is one of those '90s movies that's not done by ILM or Lightstorm or any of the major effects houses. It's a small mom and pop shop with Jeff Kleiser and Kleiser Walzak Construction Company, basically 40 people. Um, you know, so they're creating this all from like just whatever. The morphing helmets are, of course, done by Patrick Tatopoulos, who's become one of our best. He was, if you were a fan of the Sci-Fi makeup show, he was on that. He's, was a judge on that. So it all comes together. And also, one of the things behind the scenes that has to be talked about is this is the first movie that had a 3D storyboard, and basically the 3D storyboard allowed Emmerich to shoot things from different scenes. Like he could figure things out beforehand. So instead of
Mhm.
everything storyboarded in front of him, it was on a computer, and he was able to rotate the camera. Hey, we're going to get this shot, and so that when you hear about that, you're watching some of the sequences inside the temple of the pyramid that happen with the like with the fighting in between like in the stacks kind of thing. It's really an interesting kind of like what shots they chose to go with, what they worked with.
Because
Um,
those can be very tricky if you don't establish your geography and make it followable. But I mean, you maybe want a little bit of confusion to create some tension. But if it's just a jumble of shots of things happening, it can be a real mess to watch. And I
well, and
think
like, and I think they set it up when the inside of the pyramid is as basic as it comes. There's a
Mhm.
door in, and there's a room, and there's things holding up the pyramid. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like the simplicity of this production actually is something that they lose when they start going into other productions later when they get more money, and they lose some of the charm of this movie down the line when they become major filmmakers, right? Box
Mhm.
office, interesting stuff here, right? So Stargate opened in of October 28th, 1994. It for a long time had the largest opening weekend in the history of October. It grossed $16.6 million its opening weekend, so big hit right from the get go. It had the legs in this movie were huge. It lasted 4 or 5 weeks, which again, we're getting into the '90s where movies don't last as long. It opened on 2,033 screens, so about half of what Bad Boys opened this weekend, probably less than half of what Bad Boys opened this weekend too. And the budget was $55 million. So its domestic gross ends up being 71. Its international gross, it does very well overseas. 125, one of the higher numbers you're going to see from the '90s of a movie that travels well overseas, as sci-fi action films usually do. So it ends up grossing $196 million worldwide on a $55 million budget, Rich, which is
I wonder if part of the reason it did so well in foreign markets is half the dialogue is in an ancient Egyptian um, dialect that never gets translated for us. So
No,
your
it's just
audiences
Spader
aren't,
guessing. It's just Spader guessing.
but your audiences aren't having to read as much in subtitles until he starts to translate. He starts to figure it out, and
Right,
then and of course, English for somebody in France or Germany or whomever
it
who
is
doesn't speak.
not. Last week we talked about Chinatown. This week we're talking about this. This script isn't Chinatown. This is, I like it. It's not very wordy. I mean, I was thinking about it. That sequence where Spader walks in and he just does the chalkboard is about what we get. That there are other little bits of extraneous dialogue, but for the most it's very dialogue free, which I think you're right. It
Uh-huh.
probably did great overseas because it's people running around in cool masks that look like Horus and Ra the sun god and all these it looks super cool.
Yeah,
The
and
the
Roland
weapon
Emmerich is
designs are neat.
German as well, so English is his second language. So maybe doing an English language film without a whole lot of dialogue, he just felt more comfortable and was able to engage with the
Well,
material better.
and I think that's probably it's like its themes and its resin. We're gonna get to it in a second with critical, but
Mhm.
it's a base it has basically all of the genre sci-fi. You know what I mean? Like a new person in a new desert finding a girl that he can communicate with is the basis of what every book and anything we've ever read or
Mhm.
watched. But like I said, $55 million. That's for how good this movie looks. That's not a lot of money.
No.
And it only did 36% of its total domestic box office in its opening weekend. So it just bumped along. The inflation adjusted box office amount right now for domestic is 188,
Not
which
too shabby.
if you released it right now, it would be the highest grossing movie um, this summer. Just so we're clear, it would be Apes is close, but it would still be behind. It would be behind Stargate. And I think that's an interesting thing. This movie also, when it got released on video in '97, it killed. It didn't get released till '97 on video. It murdered. You know what I mean? Like when it
Uh-huh.
came out. And that's another side effect. Like this movie became one of those movies where maybe you saw it in theaters, but the moment it came out on video, you bought it and watched it with your friends, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, you know, uh, the week it came out in June, actually, when the DVD came out in June of 2009, it grossed almost $195,000. That's that's insane. That's insane for a video release. That's crazy.
Yes.
So box office, it's fine. It does whatever. Where we're gonna have issues, critical response then and now. So a couple things. We use Rotten Tomatoes as an aggregate just to get a gauge on where we're at. Critics are not a big fan of this movie. It's actually rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. We
Hmm.
very rarely, Rich, have movies on our show that are rotten. Very rarely,
True.
but it's only rotten by 6%, 6 points. So it's 54% rotten, and the audience score is at a more moderate 73%. So it's not super. It's not Star Wars, but it's also not not whatever. And I think it's interesting because I think if you nitpick the movie, you can nitpick it to death, right? I think you could talk about the holes that are driving through vast chunks of the movie. You could talk about the really cool sequence where they say where the military guys say to James Spader, "Let me understand this. You figured this out in 2 weeks, and they've been working on it for 2 years." Where you're just like, "Cool plot point. Moving on."
Yeah. My big problem that kind of resurfaced while I was watching it, from the moment they open up the Stargate till they're on the planet, it's like if it was happening in real time, it was like 4 minutes later. It feels like it's like, okay, yeah, let's go, boom, boom. It's like a
Well, yeah,
lot of
there's no like I will
no.
say like I have other problems. Like first off, a nice shout out to one of the Mars rovers, one of the first versions of the NASA rovers that will eventually be used on Mars and everything, is used briefly in this movie, and
Mhm.
it just kind of goes and gets demolished. It was very nice of NASA to let them borrow it. Anyway, I think my problem comes in like I was thinking about this today. I have two main problems.
Mhm.
And these are the problems I have, and I'm going to discuss them with you as my best movie friend.
Gotcha.
I love Kurt Russell. It's an addiction. I love everything Kurt Russell's in. I found myself today going, I do not love this Kurt Russell movie. I do not love Kurt Russell, and part of it is he is saddled with a really I want to call it, it's obligatory. It's an obligatory. His kid died from a gunshot wound, apparently of a gun he left around the house by what it's framed with, and he's sitting in the beginning of the movie. He's sitting in his kid's room, looking at a picture of a kid in a baseball uniform, holding a Beretta, and I'm like, this isn't. I mean,
I'm kind
aside
of
from the,
interesting.
it's an
Do you,
interesting choice, but it also for me it's an interesting choice, but it's
well,
also
it's
you are
not a Kurt Russell
sidelining.
movie. A Kurt Russell movie, you expect to have like certain amounts of fun, and he's playing a certain amount of swagger. This is not a Kurt Russell movie, though, so he's kind of playing a different character.
He is, and I don't mean it, but part of me like later on in the movie it becomes he has Kurt Russell moments, and so that was
Mhm.
one of my main like going into it. I forgot at how stacked the deck is for him in this movie at the beginning, right? And it becomes he's kind
Mhm.
of like he's walking around, he's smoking cigarettes like in a dramatic, heavy fashion. The other main problem is, and I think this is a problem that everybody kind of had, Jay Davidson was amazing in the Crying Game. And anything else other than the Crying Game, it's real tough to get Jay Davidson excited. And
I don't
I
think
was
there's
thinking
much to his character. I don't think there's much to his
there
character
isn't.
here.
There
No,
isn't. I agree
you
with
know,
that.
it's he was hired for a look, really, more than anything else here, I think.
Yeah,
And
he is aesthetically as close to what they wanted, a feminine boy child,
yeah.
man child.
Now,
And
I want to double back to Kurt Russell's character here for a second. I'm going to throw something at you.
okay,
I think his character arc that he kind of goes through in this movie is very similar, although not acted the same way,
okay,
to another character arc that we see in another great 80s action film.
okay.
This reminds me of what Mel Gibson's character goes through in Lethal Weapon. He starts off in that very dead, suicidal place, and through the action of the movie,
I was
he
just I
he
you know what?
finds.
You and I are so man like I love how your mind works about movies so much. I don't say it enough to you. I will say it to you.
Oh, thank you.
I was just gonna say before you said your line, I was just gonna say no action movie should begin with a Beretta unless it's Lethal Weapon.
Ah,
Uh,
I
so,
mean,
but
obviously
but
they're
I
expressing their
it's a
suicidal
different arc.
nature in different ways, but
Yeah, it's a different arc. I think part of the charm of the movie is that it has a breakneck pace. Like I think if this movie were made today, it'd be 2 hours and 40 minutes. Like it'd be so long, like trying to set everything up. This movie's like,
Mhm.
there's a symposium. He gets laughed out of the symposium, or everybody walks out on him like, "Hey, though, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about." He goes outside in the rain, and just an army guy walks up to him and is like, "Hey, uh, we need you to talk to the lady in the car." And he goes and he gets in the car, and she gives him like a ticket and shit. He doesn't even know, and she's like, "I know you just been evicted from your apartment," and like, it seems like the script is so nice in its totalitarian. It's form and function all the way. Do you know what I mean? Like, and
Uh-huh.
then 3 minutes later, he's going into a highly secure military nuclear facility in the middle of nowhere, which I will say proudly, Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin are the kings of. They're the kings of sending their people to the middle of fucking nowhere where only the government knows where they're at. And I think it's an amazing kind of like, it's a thing they play through. I mean, eventually it plays out. The biggest is Area 51 in Independence Day, but I
Yeah.
think the
They do
movie
it a
has
little bit
charm.
Godzilla, it feels like, there's a vibe
Yeah,
to that.
there's a vibe. I think there's charms to be had. Spader is an amazingly inspired choice for a sci-fi action movie. He's an amazingly inspired choice because he's always thinking as an actor, and so when you're watching him, he looks like he's processing shit from Sex Lives and Videotape. So it's like it works really well. They hit all the tropes. They hit all the tropes of like the slaves, and we're going to lead the slaves in a rebellion, and like everything is form over function, and everything is very much gloss over. It's very sizzle over steak, but a lot of the sizzle is so much fun, and it's so like the fighting is really like you know the giant guys in fucking headdresses that are utterly terrifying. You know what I mean? Like the fucking glow in the
Yeah.
dark eyes, and like they have fucking like amulets on that can like summon like giant rocks that they fly up into. Everything conceptually, everything conceptually about this movie is super fucking cool. Like it's everything your 12-year-old self goes,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah, aliens built the pyramids. Yeah, there's a giant wormhole that will allow me to go from A to B. Also, the government has had this for first. That was another thing I was thinking about. Like that's not for a 2024 audience, right? When you're watching this movie, how did they get it out of Egypt? And why is it in a fucking the bottom of an American like I just see Indiana Jones like Dr. Jones, we need you to go get a giant obelisk or a giant not obelisk, but a giant like circular. You know what I mean? Like it's the warehouse at the end of
Yeah.
Raiders. You know what I mean? Um, I I think a lot of it works. I think the Spader makes a lot of it work. Like when Spader doesn't
Mhm.
return for any of the other, like we don't have another movie, but when Spader doesn't come back for the shows or whatever, losing the Spader vibe is a big deal. Like, cause Spader at this time was like indie darling, everything was cool. Here he is in this middle of this very big budget. You know what I mean? Like, because he was an indie darling, and now he's like doing this, and this movie is quirky and fun, and he has a weird
And
sequence with like the girl, and
one thing I
it's one of
really
those.
like too is Spader's performance isn't too broad because
No,
like the fish
because it
out of
could have
water
been.
stuff could have been a lot worse and a lot of more yilk 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 played for laughs. But
He becomes endearing. It's an
yeah,
endearing
yeah, it's a
performance.
fine line to walk, and I think he walked
Well,
it
yeah,
well.
the army guys pick on him, and they throw his books, and he goes and he's like,
Yeah, it's
ah,
just like
fuck it.
so
Mm.
prototypical bully to nerd action. I was like,
Yeah, well,
come on.
like even in the middle, like that the movie has a real weird bully vibe going on. Even in the middle, Kurt
Mhm.
Russell's trying to describe him, and he's like, he's this, and he's like, buck, 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 and then he goes, I guess dweeb doesn't mean anything to you guys. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, fuck, really? We can't even get
that's
past
I
you.
think that's the strongest laugh line though in the whole movie.
That's a good laugh line. Also, like when he finally delivers his action line, he finally cuts the guy's head off with
Oh,
the.
the teleporter thing. Yeah.
It's a good kill. It's a
Oh
quality
yeah.
action kill.
Mhm.
Up until that point, there aren't a lot of there's not a lot of whatever. Um, and the outfits, I will say the Jay Davidson outfits are stunning. Although there are a weird amount of kids just kind of like fawning over him in a weird it's not icky, but it's also not like that's okay. Um, just
I don't think
it
they ever gave a indication that that's how you should read that.
no, I don't
I
no.
was just like, they're
Again, like
young
I think
acolytes who will grow up to be,
well, somebody
guards.
I would well they will either be guards or they will be the next vessel for the creepy
Yeah.
alien that he is. But it's one of those things that we don't think about in '94, but now like people will look me watch it and get like triggered or like a vibe where they just like hmm. Because there's one sequence where a little kid's like watching the entire action and he just picks up his tray and he's watching everything unfold and he just kind of hmm, this is like
Hightails it out.
Tuesday. This is like Tuesday, you know. Should also be said, and I don't know, like there are a ton of people, Richard Kind, French Stewart, and there is a young Damon Hansu, although
Hmm.
he is just Damon
Yes.
in the. So he was. I would assume he was some sort of model that became a star, but he's one of the only guards. There's two guards that get stuff to do that don't have headgear on the entire time, and he's one of the two that gets something to do because he fucks up and gets yelled at a little bit. But the script is a little clunky. It goes very fast from Discovery sci-fi movie like Contact into Lawrence of Arabia very quickly. But it's not bad. It's fun. It's Saturday matinee kind of way. You know what I mean? And Kurt
Yeah.
Russell, as much as I the early side of the movie, like when he starts befriending the kids, and he has the whole sequence where first off, the greatest no smoking, the greatest no smoking. They should have made this into an amazing, public service announcement because he does the whole thing where he has marbles and lets the kid play with a lighter, and then he's lighting the cigarette, so the kid grabs a cigarette and Kurt Russell's like, "Oh, I'll teach him. I'll learn him." And he does he does an inhale, and then the kid starts choking, and he starts stamping on the ground, and then Kurt Russell's like, "Yeah, you're right. Smoking sucks," which is really fun. And
Yes.
I appreciate it. But it's one of those movies where I think the criticisms are harsh, like because you can rip if you really want to rip it apart, you can, right? But
Mhm.
sometimes we don't need to, right? I mean, we're at that point now in our lives, Rich, where you and I can watch a movie and go, I don't need to rip it apart. I know why
Yeah.
I'm watching it. But again, even
Enjoy.
in the bad reviews, the biggest thing that comes up, and I was reading through some of them, but even most of the bad reviews say, "Hey, the movie's a mess and the special effects are okay." Um, but James Spader, you should see James Spader like playing in the sand, right?
I don't
And
know
that's
how you could. I don't know how anybody could say the special effects are just okay. I think this movie lands at a very interesting point. We kind of danced around it a little bit, where we said, yeah, it has some early CGI work, but it also is still working a lot of model work. With the ship landing and things like that.
and
And
the ships that come out are like the ships that
yeah.
come out are the great granddaddies of the ships we're going to see in Dune. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like they're the designs.
Honestly, only shot I don't like in this movie is spoilers at the end, when the ship is in orbit and then the
It
nuclear
looks
bomb goes
bad.
off.
It looks bad,
It's just like a big blue glow, and then you get that horrible flamey circle
and
that
then
we're gonna
nothing.
see again.
No debris. No debris. Nothing.
Yeah, we're gonna see that
Just
stupid flamey circle again in Star Trek, and then it's going to show up in the special editions in Star Wars a few years later, and I just hate
bad.
that.
It's bad.
It's dumb. It makes no sense to me.
It's a dumb effect,
Again, I know
especially
I'm arguing
considering
sense,
the
logic
vacuum of
for Star Wars,
space.
for
It
God's
makes
sake,
no
but still.
sense. Makes no
Yeah.
sense. You're absolutely right. I think I think Davidson is a little overmatched, but aesthetically he is exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Legacy franchise viability. I was thinking about
Oh.
this 5 minutes in 5 minutes into the movie today.
Hmm.
If you somehow talk Kurt Russell and James Spader into making a reboot of this movie or making a sequel well after the fact, I was thinking about it. Dean Devlin and Roland Emmerich shouldn't have made a sequel to Independence Day. They should have made a sequel to this because this is a never-ending loop. You can go anywhere. You just got to change the cartouches. You just got to change.
Here's the problem: the Showtime series, which became the Sci-Fi series, which became the Sci-Fi franchise with 2 other sequel series, kind of
they did it all.
Just the idea of Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin coming back and doing sequels, and they've said it. They said we would, but the show is now the thing, and
it's doing everything. Also, I do want to point out with how popular these shows are, Rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
This has got to be regarded as one of the most influential films ever, like sci-fi action movies ever made. Like it. How many shows, Rich? Right? Like so many film sequels got canceled. How many? There's novel series. There are, Bill McKay writes a novel series, television spin-off, CD-ROMs, Rich.
Yeah, a couple of direct-to-video movies. It's insane, and what's I have to give that MGM and that production team of the hosts of all the Stargate TV stuff a lot of credit because they've made that same section of forest in Vancouver look like a dozen different alien planets at least, and
and that's the thing. It spans almost 20 years. Like they've been making stuff from this movie. And we should talk about the reboot. The reboot things have been going since 2013. Basically, they were planning a reboot, maybe with a trilogy in mind, as everything is now. But then 2014, that MGM and Warner Brothers were partnering together for the reboot, with Emmerich directing, Devlin producing, and then it kind of just fizzled. There's another article about 2016 where they basically said, plans to make a reboot and a potential new series are stalled, fighting over rights. And then 2023 was announced that MGM are rebooting the franchises, but they're working on it both to be interconnected. So it's going to be television and movies kind of like doing an interconnected thing, which sometimes it works, Rich, and sometimes it doesn't. But the influential nature of this movie, like it's got paw prints over every other major sci-fi franchise since. Like, you talk about 99, The Matrix. Matrix tried to do everything, right? But they're following in the footsteps of this movie, television show, anime, books. Everything stems from this movie, and it had it's weird.
Have you watched like all of the Stargate TV stuff?
No, I was thinking about that today. I have a real tough time when it goes like I don't have a tough time if it goes from television to movies.
Okay.
I have a real tough time personally when things go from movies to television. Just how I was raised.
Yeah,
and it's changed.
Son of a theater owner.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like the way I was raised is movies are the epitome, right? And again, this opinion has gradually changed. But my dad was still alive when Stargate came out. You know what I mean? And my dad would be like, "Yeah, but the show doesn't have Kurt Russell. It's got Richard Dean Anderson. Who gives a fuck?" Like,
not too bad.
No, I don't mean it. I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm just telling you how like how maybe young JW walking up to my dad going, "Hey, can we get Showtime so we can watch the Stargate show?" My dad going, "Yeah, whatever. It's over. That franchise is over. It went to television." So it's
I
just how I was
watched.
raised, but I've changed. This has changed, obviously, as TV has gotten so good.
I mean, I watched the first 2 seasons or so, and it was fine. I didn't kind of like really plug into it, and this is at the time though when this was coming out what in
96, 97, I think is when the
yeah,
show's.
96, 97. So Babylon 5 had just started or was just about to start,
The
and so
Babylon 5, Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's a lot. There's a lot on your plate there to be able to go, and then to step down. Be like, well, it's not going to have James Spader in it.
to be honest, the way like Babylon 5 was structured, that you knew Joe Straczynski had his plan in place from day one of how the final episode of season 5 was going to play out. He had that arc planned out. Whereas so many other shows were just starting to get into the idea of doing an arc, like X-Files or DS9.
Buffy.
But they were kind of pulling it
Buffy.
out of their ass as they were going along.
Buffy
So,
was also around this time, right? So
uh-huh.
if my plate was full.
so,
Is the other
so,
way I
so
would say it.
I was really kind of like, okay, if I get the feeling that you're just kind of making this up as you go along, or maybe at best, season to season, you're figuring out what you want to do. I think you're kind of wasting my time, because this guy is like, hey, I planned out 5 years and I could get canceled after 13 episodes in my first season. I don't care. I'm going to shoot, I'm going to call my shot and, swing for the fences.
Well, and that's
And
the other
if
thing.
you
Like,
weren't doing that for me on any other show, I was kind of like, meh, I'll
and
probably dip in and out.
how many
I'm not going
times
to care.
the cast changed on this show, right? Or it became like Stargate, and then it was Stargate Atlantis, then it was Stargate SG-1, and then it was like there were so many different versions of it where you just kind of sat back. I'm not saying they weren't good. I know there's a fan base out there for them and everything, but for me, it got lost in the shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about maybe going back and watching it after watching today, but there's so much, Rich,
Yeah,
that there's so much to watch.
I was having the same thought, us being on the same wavelength here. I was like midway through, I was like,
I would like to
maybe I
see
should
more of
go back
this.
and give the series a second shot. And then I pulled up the Wikipedia entry on the franchise, and I was like, okay, I'd have to watch 6 seasons and then start watching 7 and 8 in parallel with Stargate Atlantis, which runs, another blah blah blah, and then
Yeah,
I have to.
that's the other thing. It's not just as I was reading it today. You and I did the exact same thing today. As I was reading it, it's not only do you have to watch, like it's not the series is organized. Stargate, Star SG-1, Atlantis, whatever. They had 2 shows running at the same time at one point, where you actually had to watch both shows to figure out what was going to happen at the end of the seasons. That's a.
To be
I'm
fair,
gonna.
Buffy and Angel did that too, though.
I
But
understand, but what I'm saying to you is, we're in a different time frame. We're in a
it
time frame now where everything's on top of us, and you have to kind of push everything away to try to find stuff that you might want to watch.
at the risk of sounding like a really old man, just looking at all of that, I went, that
Nope.
seems exhausting.
It
And I'm
seems
not doing
exhausting, and also like it doesn't like. And this is a terrible thing to say, but I'm going to say it to you, and I will stand by it.
it. Uh-oh.
Does it get better than the movie? Does any of it is anything in the Star, like I know fans who love Stargate will say, Atlantis is better than SG-1, and Atlantis does this and this, and there are fans of all the different, like, well, I like this one because this cast has, the one guy who's like one of the warriors, right? That guy was
Mm-hmm.
super popular in Sci-Fi. I remember people like, oh my god, they got one of the guys that was under one of the helmets, and now he's working with the government, and he's an alien. And yes, but is anything better than what we watched today, Rich? Probably not. So also, like, the other side of it is, should I give up maybe watching something new, like My Adventures with Superman, or rewatching Buffy, or rewatching The Sopranos, or rewatching House of the Dragon before the new House of the Dragon season comes, before I do this? And it seems like an awful lot of fucking work. And these seasons are not short, Rich. These are a syndicated program.
Yeah,
and a
these are
cable
solid
show,
22 episode seasons.
22 episode seasons.
Which that's not a problem. Just the fact that, I'm like, well, okay, they're full real television series. You have a lot of time to do a lot of meat with your characters and stuff like that. It's just
a long time, Rich.
If I really liked the show, maybe I would have stayed with it when it was initially running. And
that's the thing. That's the other thing. We had so many other things going on.
I'm
happy being
fans of this franchise. That they have all this.
I'm happy being. I was thinking about it today. Also, like, the other side of it is, I'm happy being a Stargate movie fan. Do you know what I mean? The movie is a perfect slice. 2 hours. It's 2 hours and 1 minute. Super, super effective, and it gives me all the feels. I do whatever. Jaye Davidson aping up, ripping necklaces off, and all. James Spader acting kind of goofy and wonky with the girl, and I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you tell me we want to do a reboot, it better be. How should I say this for the folks at MGM and Warner Brothers? It better be a sequel boot, because I think it's going to be real hard for people to It's going to be real hard for people to get into it without having some connective tissue to either the shows or the movie. And I would imagine if you could somehow, lure James Spader from his Blacklist, after his Blacklist show is done, you could lure James Spader back as Daniel, and maybe lure Kurt Russell back. Might be something there. We're 30 years away from the original. We've had modicum success with sequels that are over 30 years old, but the rebootquels, as long as they have connective tissue, Rich, they seem to do fine. But this movie is a perfect example of 90s sci-fi filmmaking. It's big, it's loud, it's crashy, and it's a fun watch.
Yeah.
Aside from small quibbles. I didn't ask a lot. I was watching the screenplay today, and I'm like, I wanted to do the line, well, this script ain't Chinatown, just because it's snarky and fun, but it's also a pretty compact. It never, like, we talked about The Watchers, right? You and I were talking about The Watchers. The Watchers buckles under the weight of its premise, right?
Mm-hmm.
This movie doesn't. So it has to get some points for that. It doesn't buckle under the idea of charity of the gods. I had to get it in. Charity of the gods, people making these pyramids. And that's a great place to stop. Stargate's a great movie. We got other great movies coming up in this summer Film-A-versary. Next week, Rich, before we actually, you want to tell everybody where people can find your shit, your stuff, your amazing writing?
Thank you. All of my writing and film reviews can be found at FilmBuffOnline.com. We also have a Facebook page that lets you know when anything new goes up on the site, as well as some exciting, fun on this date in history, film history posts, things like that. You can listen to me on 2 other podcasts, one being the Film Scribes, which is from the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, which I am a member of. We haven't put out anything recently, but I'm sure we'll probably have something soon coming up. And my other podcast is the one I do with my very best friend and co-host, Natasha Bogutsky. And that's called The Big Picture Podcast. You can find that at bigpicturepod.com. And you can find me on the socials at FilmBuffRich on Twitter and Blue Sky.
Okay, you can find me in addition to doing this show, I do a little show on Tuesday nights called Loud and Nerdy. Tomorrow night at 9, we will have everything going on that we normally do, although we will be missing a member tomorrow night. So bear with us in that regard. It'll just be me and Kyle tomorrow night. Jerry is on a cruise, so very excited.
Nice.
But he did send me a movie. He did send me a movie from his basement, so we're gonna have that. Also, you can find me JW the Movie Guy on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Skies, Threads, and Facebook. All those places. You can also find us in the Indie Escape Network on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Twitter, and IMDb. Jesus. Also, I want to give a quick mention. Here's it's picture James Spader, but this is my favorite moment in the movie because it's such a catty bitch moment. Is I'll take that necklace. And I got a picture of it today. He's such a bitch. Wonderfully so. Next week on the Indie Escape Network, we are going to do a movie that Rich and I grew up on, but also Rich and I have suffered because of. I say this with all due respect. There are a lot of imitators of this movie. We're doing Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction next week.
Oh yeah, baby. Right, we are.
It is one of the greatest movies ever made, and it is also one of the movies that everybody thought they could also make, which is, it's both a curse and a blessing that we're going to talk about.
Looking at you 2 days in the valley.
I was thinking Killing Zoe. I was going to go Killing Zoe.
Ooh.
But I like Killing Zoe, although Killing Zoe, it goes off the rails. It's completely off the rails. But that's next week on the Indie Escape Network. We're going to be doing Pulp Fiction. We'll see everybody next week, next Monday. Thank you for joining us tonight. Stay safe. Go see a movie. Lots of things opening. And if your dad's still with you, Rich and I both have lost our dad. If your dad's still with you, is your dad still with us?
Yeah, my dad's still with me.
I fucked that up. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. I fucked that up. I'm like, I've lost both. So it's.
I understand. No.
Take time out to love on your dad. Buy him a gift. Take him to a movie. Show him something. Do something. Just before it's too late. Have a great week. Have a happy Father's Day for all the people that watch. And we'll see everybody next week. Stay safe.
Take care.
I'll see everybody for Loud and Nerdy tomorrow night. Bye.